Hi there, my name is Matthew Brick. I'm a Valor Christian High School student, brother of four. I'm a wrestler, and I'm out to find interesting stories to talk to about, make connections, and hopefully point people to God. Let's get this, the Brick House Podcast.
This is Brick's home. This is your house. Presenting the Brick House Podcast. The Brick House. Here comes the boom.
Hey there, guys. My name's Matthew Brick. Welcome back to the Brick House Podcast. Today I'm here with a teacher, a friend, a serial entrepreneur, but she does a lot of things. She's here in the community at Valor, a loving person, a person after God. She's had a daughter who's gone all 4 years here at Valor. Her name's Shane Gilbert. How are you doing?
Hi, great. Thanks for having me today. This is exciting.
It is exciting, yeah. I know we were talking about it, and then it kind of got lost, but we finally we're doing it. So
Yeah,
I'm happy.
I'm glad to be here, and I can't wait to listen to your whole series of podcasts. I'm very proud of this whole event you've got going on here. Brick House. This is exciting.
Brick House, yeah. Thank you very much. Since we haven't talked a lot since last year, really, just you were telling me how you're doing. Well, first tell me a little bit what are you up to? What's up on your radar right now? Because so you're a CEO of a vanilla company, right?
Yeah, I co-own and I'm the founder of a company called the Sweetest Bean Vanilla Company. And that comes with its own gigantic story that lasted a decade in Africa. But I co-own it with a friend of mine. We grew up on the same street as kids, and then now as adults, she's also a serial entrepreneur, always starting a new business, but she's really geared on the business side. I'm geared on the Africa side. All of our vanilla comes from Uganda. So that's one of my several businesses that I don't do full time. I do twice a week, and we're constantly growing it. But we're the biggest vanilla company in Colorado and any surrounding state, other than maybe California and the Midwest. So in the middle of those two things, we're the only one. So if you are drinking a beer, an IPA that has vanilla in it, it might come from us. Or especially if you're in Colorado eating ice cream, maybe Little Man ice cream.
Yeah.
We're the big vanilla supplier.
And that's so cool. Didn't last year you win 10 grand for
We won a huge grant, $35,000 for being the female business of the year in the whole. We beat out all the other applicants in the whole country. So we were able to get our warehouse this year because of that grant and grow pretty exponentially. So.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
That's great. I think that's just so cool. I don't know what I want to do specifically, but I think you're an inspiration. Well, tell us what, with all the things that you've done, and how do you manage it, and where did that inspiration start from? How did you, maybe not necessarily vanilla, but how did you get in all the things that you do?
Yeah, well, some people are just built weird, and I think my whole life, my mom would always. She didn't mean it as a compliment, really. She would say, "Oh, you're a jack of all trades, master of none." I could kind of do everything because I would get bored, and then I'd start something. I didn't quit until it was good, until it was finished. But I'm really a starter. I start things. So there was this competition in 4th grade called Mini Society. I had to build a business, and I ended up being Entrepreneur of the Year. That's what I won. I made the most money in 4th grade. It was fake money. And it was because my dad, he's a fireman, but he would cut glass for stained glass windows. And we had so much glass that I created these little glass trinkets that I would paint with paint pens, people's individualized little whatever they wanted. So if they wanted it to say mom in her favorite color with something their mom loved, and they would buy it with fake money. Anyhow, from there, I just learned how to work hard, create a product, put it together, convince everyone to buy it, create a strategy. So I started really young and it exploded sort of as I grew up. So I have, I've been a teacher all this time, but on the side, I've started a production company in LA, made a few huge movies. One of my documentaries was because I helped put on the largest independent rock concert in history. That's a movie about a band called Dispatch. So over the years, I've done these things that blew up, and then it gave me confidence of like, oh, I can do that. And then if anyone said I couldn't, then I really did it.
Yeah.
So it all kind of is a little bit out of my rebellious spirit. So right now I own a production company called Ezekiel 12 with a mentor of mine. He's a pastor in San Diego. I'm producing a feature film right now that's a documentary. Will come out in theaters in October. And yeah, I teach all day, but then the second school's over, I'm producing my documentary or I'm going to the Vanilla Warehouse. So that's what I got going.
Wow, that's great. And like, what keeps you going? Like, do you have a profound love for teaching youth or helping with youth? Because I can assume just like you already are so busy on the stuff outside of school, and then they come in and then grade papers, teach, and English and all that stuff. Like, what keeps you going with schooling?
Okay, that is 100% Jesus Christ. Because I think if I were to reflect back on my life, I was a youth leader for a long time. I did this thing called Young Life.
Oh,
so about
okay.
12 years I was a Young Life leader, and that is just fun. It's just fun. But, you learn about really why are you on this planet, and that if God is real and he died for you, you could have an extraordinary life. And once I learned that, about 19 years old, kind of changed my whole life and geared it towards God. So yeah, something drives me. It's supernatural spirit from the Lord. Also, things like I had a passion to win an Oscar. Like I wanted to write the best screenplay ever in the world. And that was not meant for me. I'm just a starter. God's like, this is the gifting I gave you. So I then started producing. And from there, that took me to Africa in 2005, where I met a group of street kids. They changed my whole life. One of them dies on the street while I'm there. Her name was Mary. She ends up leaving behind the cutest little girl you've ever seen. And I'm like, well, what are we going to do with this kid? And so I stayed for, 7 to 10 years. I mean, I was working there for a decade. But I adopted that little girl. Her name is Jessica. She's now in college at Westmont College. But she has been my real passion to get her through school. God assigned me to her. So that's my family. And from there, Jessica and I just wanted to help as many people as we could. So, yeah, I did do charity for 10 years, but I have come to learn that charity doesn't work. Just giving away things doesn't change the world. So building economy and giving jobs so people can change their own life. So that is what my vanilla company is. I have a team of people in Uganda. The guy who runs it, I've raised him since he was 8. His name's Alex, and he's the manager. So he employs everyone, and they buy the vanilla, ship it to me, and we make it. But it's really so that we can change economy in a third world country and basically be the foundation to life change. Does that make sense? So I do say I don't do anything unless there's some greater purpose God gave me to do it.
Yeah, and would you be willing to share, like, because I have some other questions, but like, how did you come of faith, or what was like that for you? Because I feel like you care so much for people, and you have this like deep, profound love of wanting to encourage and help. But how did you get to that point?
Oh, thank you. I don't think any of that's me. I'm like at the core, don't really think about things before I do them. And then afterwards, I'm like, I think God was using me. I think he just uses me when I'm not paying attention. Yeah, I did want to go and feed all the homeless people in the world. I did want to go to Africa and use my skill. But while I was there, come to find out that that's not really my job. That's really his. And I was available to him. Let me put it that way. I was available. So I think even here where I teach at Valor, I'm just available to, if somebody needs me, I want to be there, right? 100%. Okay. Who doesn't want to have purpose for their life? I mean, everyone wants a purpose. I'm of the camp that money does not buy happiness.
Okay.
I think I grew up not rich, but I did grow up in a very wealthy area, Cherry Hills, Greenwood Village, Colorado. It's very hoity-toity. I drove a BMW. I showed horses. Think of the snottiest sort of world that I fox hunted as a child.
Okay.
I lived in that world. And then all of a sudden, the place where I found my pure joy and happiness was the worst slum you could find in a third world country, and I just gave everything I owned away over and over again and learned what true happiness is. And I think I'm always constantly trying to get back to that true happiness. Okay, God, what do you want me to do? And how can I help as many people along the way and not get corrupted?
Okay.
So can I give you my favorite Bible verse?
Oh, for sure.
The day I met Jessica, my friend Pastor Bob calls me from San Diego on one of those old Nokias.
Okay.
I can barely hear him. And I said, oh my gosh, I just met all these street kids, and all these kids are begging, and they have nothing, and they have malaria, they're dying. What do I do? And he said, well, the Bible verse, James 1:27. And I screamed back in the phone. I was like, no, I don't have it memorized. Just tell it to me. And the verse goes, the religion that God says is pure and right is to look after the orphans and widows in their distress and keep oneself undefiled by the world. So I think that's been my goal ever since. I have it tattooed on my foot. So does my daughter. That's our verse. To help all the orphans and widows and not get screwed up by the world. And if I could do those two things, I think I'm doing it right.
I think so.
But
That's
I don't
powerful.
know. I screw it up a lot, but I'm trying.
Yeah, I can go one day where I'm on fire and I feel like I'm helping people. I'm just on fire with God. And then, another day I'm upset, yelling at my brothers, not saying so nice things.
Yeah.
But
it's a journey. It really is.
And people are constantly like, Matthew, you're only 16, so you got plenty of life on this earth, hopefully. And so you don't have to worry. But I'd ask, what was it like in Africa? Because, do you push maybe, discovery trips or something of that sort? Because, what was it first like in Africa? When you got there and just spending you said 10 years. Mm-hmm. That's crazy. What were some of the experiences like? Or, what did you take away from that?
Well, it's definitely not for everybody.
Okay.
If God tells someone this is what I want you to do, then they have to really hear him and believe it. Otherwise, it could be quite traumatizing. I mean, I have a lot of PTSD moments, a lot of history. Almost died in a tribal war. I have a lot of stories. But I knew he wanted me to go. I felt it in my soul. I heard him say it to me. I was actually at a rock concert filming this movie, and I had terrible heat stroke. I had been there all day. And so I think I blamed it on the heat stroke at the time. But people were crowd surfing. There were 110,000 teenagers there. And we're filming this movie. And I have invited everybody. And we shut down the highway. And I now have a restraining order against me in the city of Boston. I'm probably never allowed to put on an event there again. So anyhow, I remember the crowd went dead quiet in my head. And I hear a voice. It was my voice. But it was clear as day, like the clearest thought I had ever had. I need you to go to Africa to change American youth culture. And I stopped right there and argued with the voice as if I had time. Because, the SWAT team was surrounding me. I have video. It's in the movie. The SWAT team is everywhere. So I argued with the voice, and I was like, wait. Do you mean you need me to take American youth culture to Africa to help Africa? No. This is what the voice said. No. I need you to go to Africa to help American youth culture. Now, I didn't get what that meant until I went. I took 4 19-year-old guys. We all went. I was following them for a documentary, thinking, well, maybe I'll make a movie. So I followed these boys, and turns out from there kind of started a little bit of a movement for years. People would come from every college, lots of high schools, lots of churches, and they'd come and volunteer at our programs that I had built up. And I just went and stayed, and then people started showing up. And so now I look back at that voice and go, oh, we were the ones being changed. Yeah, it was nice that we fed people, we built a farm, we had a school, those things did happen. But my friends and family and the wealth and the access we had to make a difference was the very thing holding all of them back from their own faith. And I think once we learned to give everything away, we ourselves were changed. And so, yeah, I think that's what a discovery trip of valor might do, is really change our hearts. Truth is that what God needs us to do to other people? No.
Okay.
He didn't need me at all. Everyone who came, though, I think needed me to just start it because I'm a starter. So I started it, and then he took over. So I don't really have an answer to that, but I've watched Americans go to countries all over the world and ruin those places. Take their fancy things that they know and mess it up and give away lots of money that only held people back. I do not think money solves problems. I think we have the critical thinking to come up with solutions, but it's definitely not showing up with fancy things. And maybe, for example, my daughter, who grew up on the street, right? She said, Mom, when you guys came, it's not like we thought that we were poor. We didn't know we were poor. We were really happy. I had a very happy childhood, even though her mother had died. She was like, we didn't know we were poor till the white people showed up and started making us wear nicer shoes. So we've got to remember that, like, our sense of economic status is different than other places in the world.
Yeah, no.
I don't know if that makes sense. Does that help?
I feel like it does. Like, I'm learning it a little bit in history and just like a little bit of like, we're learning about the slave trade and just like imperialism and things like that. And like, right when like a lot of that started happening, where the European countries, the America, South America, America, would go into Africa, and they basically just took over. They didn't consult the people, obviously. And I don't know, I would assume maybe that's even up till today. Like, those things are still happening. And it's not necessarily our view is better, but, well, probably it isn't. Like, you're able to, I don't know, I would assume that they're able to flourish off of their own things that they've come up with, and how they do society. Just because it's different than what we do doesn't make it right or wrong.
No, let me give you an example.
Yeah.
This is my current example.
Okay.
So, learning about vanilla. First of all, the Queen of England, back in 1250, the original Queen Elizabeth, she got some vanilla from those Spanish conquistadors, those Spanish Armada, sorry.
Okay.
They had brought vanilla from Mexico to England. And you need vanilla. It cuts the bitterness of cocoa. You need vanilla to make like hot chocolate. And in Paris at the time, they were drinking fancy hot cocos. And she wanted that.
Okay.
So when she colonized Africa, Madagascar, she sent those vanilla vines and said, you grow this vanilla for me. So they go to Africa. Down right off the coast of Madagascar is an island called Reunion Island. And this one slave owner, one of the colonizers, is trying to grow the vanilla, but it won't grow. The flowers open, the orchid flower opens, but then nothing ever comes of it. Well, there's this slave named Albius. He's 12 years old, and he watches these orchids. They open for 1 hour, the heat of the day, and then they dry out, die, and fall off. And he figures out there's no bees to pollinate the flowers because the bees live in Mexico. They couldn't transport the bees, right?
Okay.
So he learns how to hand pollinate this by hand, this orchid flower. Then it takes 9 months to grow that bean. 9 months.
That's crazy.
So he figures out how, a slave boy at 12 years old figures out how to grow vanilla. Well, who needs vanilla? The richest people in the world. They need it for their fancy chocolates, their croissants, their ice cream. The poorest people in the world have to grow it. You have to live within a certain distance from the equator. And it's such hard work. You have to hand pollinate every single orchid flower. And it only opens for 1 hour. So you have to run the vines all day long and never take a break. And then it takes 9 months to grow it and another 3 months to cure it. You have to have slave labor to make that happen. So the poorest people in the world make something for the richest people in the world. That is how the world works right now. You want something with anything in vanilla, you want your vanilla latte? The poorest people that you can imagine had to make it for you. So who's in Madagascar now? That's colonized by India. There's 40 companies. They're all owned by Indian companies who then bribe the parliament. No one else is allowed to export. They employ Madagascar people for 75 cents a day. Poverty, the poverty line is $2 a day. They don't even pay extreme poverty pay. They pay less than half of that, 75 cents a day to make your vanilla. So everyone eating Madagascar vanilla and bragging about it, that is what is happening right now. And kids, teenagers, all in prison from trying to steal it. So I've been working on trying to change that in Uganda, paying minimum wage, paying more than minimum wage, trying to regulate the pricing. But, it's a battle.
Well, I can't even imagine. That just like strikes me. It's just like I feel like in this past year, I've really like realized that, I should be grateful for a lot of that I have. But yeah, that's just, it still strikes me. It's just like, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good to know. And I wish the whole world knew that when they would brag about their fancy foods. They don't really know where it all comes from, do they? You've got to know who actually sources it. So we have a great economic divide in the world.
Yep.
And I think that's why you go on a trip. That's why you, Matthew Brick, go to a great school, get a great education. So you grow up, you have the critical thinking skills to say, what impact am I going to make? Where am I going to put my energy? Can I use what I know to help people?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so with coming back from Africa with your daughter, like I can't imagine what that was like. If you'd be willing to share, just like.
Well, first we moved to Indonesia for 5 years.
Okay.
When she was 10, I was like, we got to find a real school. Because although I built a school, I was the one training the teachers. Me and my teacher friends would train the teachers. I'm like, well, we can't stay here. You'll never go to college in America. So we moved to an international school in Jakarta, Indonesia. And I was so tired after all of those years in Africa that I literally hid out. I was like Elijah when he crawls in the cave in the Bible and is like, God, I'm done. You do the rest yourself. I'm not working for you anymore. So I hid out for a few years. Like even we would go to church and just sit in the back row and not introduce ourselves to anyone. So I'm like, don't tell anyone I'm a missionary. Like I would just be like, don't tell anyone, Jessica, we did this. They might make us help them. I don't want to help anybody. So anyway, I took a break. She grew up. She worked super hard to get caught up in school because she was behind every kid in the world. And we were just getting ready really to go to Valor as a high school kid. So, and she was an athlete and she was a gymnast and then did every sport at school. So we just focused on her for 5 years because I had basically ignored her till she was 10. I mean, I was her mom, but we had so much work to do. And I raised 65 kids for a good 7 years, but it turned into, when we built the school, 300 kids.
Wow.
So I had too much to do, and poor Jessica was just like following us around, just, now paint this gate, now go clean this up, now babysit this kid. Like her childhood was a lot of hard work. But she loved it, and she was a joy. So anyhow, when we got done with middle school, she had picked this fancy school in Highlands Ranch, Colorado. And I was trying to explain to her, I was like, honey, I don't know if there's other black kids there. I don't know if there's anybody who would understand us there. Even though I grew up here, right down the road in Cherry Hills, I was like, I don't know if we're going to fit in. And I was totally wrong because we had a Zoom call. She wanted to try it. We applied. We had a Zoom call in the middle of the night with the admissions guy. And he gets on the screen and he's African-American guy. He was a football player in college and ended up being the coolest guy we could meet. And she just fell in love with him. And then that was it. We're going to Valor. So I didn't know how we were going to pay for it. We didn't own anything. And I got a job. I applied to a job here, and thank God I got one. And then we gave away everything we own, and we moved here with one suitcase each. We had absolutely nothing. I think we slept on the floor first, part of high school. We didn't even have a couch or anything. And then some friends gave us some furniture. And from there, we just kind of pretended like we fit in until we finally did.
Fake it till you make it.
Till you make it. So it was a little rough at first. Like we kept trying different churches and, we just didn't fit in anywhere. We had just been through so much in life. I think we were a little traumatized by real life versus this comfortable existence.
Okay.
So it took us a little while to adapt, but I think we were okay. By Jessica's sophomore year, she was class president. So, I mean, she couldn't have had that bad of a time adapting, right? She had a million friends.
That's great. I mean, I think, I don't know, I can't say for her, but I think I've been through some things, and I feel like I can personally say even though they weren't they didn't play out as how I would have wanted them to, but they've worked out in the best for me. They've given me a strength that no one else has. It's given me kind of a leg up. And looking like during the struggle, it wasn't easy. But now looking back, it's like, okay, well, I wouldn't change anything. And I was just listening to actually a podcast today, but it was just like something along the lines of like your attitude amongst struggle is what pleases the Lord, and something along those lines, just like your ability to be like, I can't control what's happening, but still moving forward, keep moving forward, keep moving. I don't know, from Dory or whatever, but
Yes.
just keep moving. And I think I don't know, for me, it's been great. I feel like now that I'm in my sophomore year, I've figured out things just a little bit, like, because it's easier than last year, and I just hope that it continue kind of going down that way.
It will, but do not ever shy away from failure.
Okay.
Or the fear of failure. I mean, that'll hold you back a little bit, but you got to fight through it, because everyone out there who's just got comfort and success, they're not gaining that grit that you're talking about.
Okay.
That ability to overcome at all costs. And you need that. You can't do anything cool or extraordinary in your life if you don't suffer, because you'll never build the mindset to do it, right?
Yeah.
So welcome it. Like every time something's hard, go, okay. The cool part right now is I get to figure out how to get out of this and do it better next time. And then if you have that mindset, then you can go do great things. So I think my struggle was no one ever told me that.
Okay.
So I wish I had learned that at your age. You're way ahead of the game. Just even this podcast is a reflection on how life is going, right?
Yeah.
That in itself catapults you farther ahead than everybody else.
Yeah, I just knew that, like, I feel like I've always been somewhat okay with talking to people, and then I was like, how can I do this? I mean, I had this idea for this, but then it went in a whole completely different direction. I didn't really think I'd be talking about things that, I was thinking kind of like, let's talk about stuff that's not so meaningful, but I'm so glad that it changed. I realized that there's no way that I could make a podcast about something that's not meaningful. Like, people are not going to listen to it unless it's meaningful or unless it's like affecting someone. And I'm just so glad that I'm like now I'm going on soon to be like, I've recorded at least 22 episodes. I just haven't released all of them. And I'm able to say like, I'm actually doing something, even if it only affects one person. I'm doing something that like truly brings me happiness, and I hope that it like brings God or shows God through it.
Yeah.
Something that.
And it will. It will.
Yeah.
I was just reminded of this as you were talking. I've heard people say this. Your greatest strength is your greatest weakness. Have you heard that before?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And that is you, because I think back to a year ago of the kid who would not shut up in my class, who I had to make stand in the hallway, who I was always like, who is going to make this kid sit still? And it was Matthew Britt. And now 1 year later, you have turned that into this incredible ability and skill.
Well, thank you.
And that's how it always is, right? Like, my weakness is that I don't finish anything. But I figured out that is also my strength, right? I'm a starter. I start things for people. And I got to start them or no one else will, because sometimes people have a fear of starting something when there's nothing. Well, you're doing the same thing. So you got to just keep using the voice that you have and your confidence that you have to spin it into something awesome, and that's what God's going to use.
Well, thank you so much. I just have like kind of one last question. Like, if you could say anything to the people at Valor or young people or anyone, what would you say? Like, yeah, what would be your final message to them?
Oh my goodness. I want it to be so good, and I have nothing. I'm just weak in the brain. I think my life has taught me to, if you live for yourself, you try and become famous, rich, successful in your own right, you will fail at it, because even if you get all those things, I think you'll be disappointed in yourself in the end. So turn that around. Live for God, live for others, and you do those two things first. You might not be rich and successful and have the fancy thing that you wanted, but you're going to have something so much richer, so much more extraordinary, and it will be something that will be your legacy later. I think that's right. I hope that I live to see that that's the truth.
I think so. I hope so. I don't know.
We'll see.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you, Mrs. Gilbert.
Thank you. This has been a great moment for me.
Thank you. Okay, guys, check her out. See what all the production stuff she's doing. If you want to say what those are, or maybe when they're coming out. Or
Oh, yeah. Well, you can check me out on Ezekiel12productions.com or the Sweetest Bean Vanilla Company, or, yeah. And if you ever need a job at a warehouse making vanilla, you let me know.
Okay, and I've tried actually the Sweetest Bean before. It's Matthew Brick approved. Thank you guys for listening in. See you guys next week. Love ya. Bye.